Vibrant, wise, quirky, diverse. The women of the Caribbean are the wheels on which our society turns. They cooked to survive. Their meals are laced with the aroma of fortitude, the memory of pain, and the spicy taste of resilience, and a legacy of love that continues to nurture us to this day.
We were blessed to grow up surrounded by many wonderful cooks. And our meals, our childhoods were filled with many delicious meals at the tables of our female relatives and caregivers, all of whom served wonderful food, each in their own way. And so when we started out in the food business 25 years ago, our desire was to replicate the experience of living, growing up, and dining in the Caribbean, where food is as equally as diverse and varied as the many hands that prepare it, from island to island, from home to home, and from street to street.
We were never interested in really being known as we began our culinary career, in being known as the best chefs or the best restaurateurs, but rather as modern-day storytellers, wisdom keepers, guardians of our culture. But we faced a contradiction. For too long, our female ancestors had been unacknowledged, unseen, and forgotten. We had not told their stories because we did not know their stories.
And so began a lifelong quest to create joyful and soulful spaces that celebrate the legion of female ancestors and wise women who have cooked and cared for so many for so long. In order to fulfill this quest, we had to become accidental archaeologists and start digging. In excavating our own stories, we unearthed a new reality. And we found that knowing the place of your ancestors' role in history is a powerful way to find the courage to claim your power and presence in the now.
Our great-grandmother, Martha Matilda Briggs, is one of those ancestors. What we heard mostly about her were from elder members of the family who reveled in the nostalgic childhood food memories. Her signature crisp crust patties, her infamous Easter buns, her prune ice cream, her plantain tarts, her loud, booming, and handsome presence, her booming voice. Born at the end of the 19th century, she was a single mother with 7 children who began her working life as a domestic and laundress before finding her calling as a restaurant owner. And by restaurant owner, what we knew that to mean was that she owned a small neighborhood patty shop in the 1930s that was famous for its crisp crust patties.
But before we delve a little bit deeper into her life, let's take a step back in time. The island of Jamaica began as a plantation society built on the back of African slave labor and the lucrative sugar trade. Sugar was considered liquid gold in the 18th and 19th centuries, making Jamaica a true diamond in the British crown. It was a land of great wealth and opulence for some, and extreme strife and suffering for others. Slavery was abolished in 1833, and all slaves on the island of Jamaica were emancipated in 1838. Immediately, the social structure on the island began to change. And it is into this post-emancipation era that Ma Briggs was born in Manchester, Jamaica in 1875.
By 1875, the society was changing. It was an ethnically diverse world, still under British colonial rule. The 1900s in Jamaica was a time of contradiction. Freed people were now well under the way to forging new lives that had domestic equality and entrepreneurial freedom. There was an ethnically diverse world, and there were many contradictions. Power and wealth remained in the hands of the very few. Yet, at the same time, a parallel world was developing on the fringes of polite society, where a new kind of outlier was being born, the powerful Afro-Caribbean matriarch, whose role was never again to be subjugated to the rule of another.
For women of color in particular, the production, distribution, and sale of food was one of the easiest pathways to financial freedom and to accomplish this. Our great-grandmother was one of these outliers. We always knew that she was important in our family. What we didn't realize was how important she actually was to her community as well. She was what we call in Jamaica a real up-top boss.
She actually owned her first restaurant as far back as the 1920s. It was called the Royal Cafe. in the heart of downtown Kingston, in prime commercial real estate, opposite the prestigious law offices of one of Jamaica's leading firms. This nugget of information led us to Discovery, an article circa 1929 in the Daily Gleaner, detailing a court action that involved the revoking of her tavern license. To our surprise, she was being represented by the universally respected and brilliant barrister Norman Washington Manley.
As young Jamaicans, this was a significant detail. Besides being a handsome devil, Norman Manley was a World War II veteran and a brilliant scholar. He was one of Jamaica's founding fathers, and he is credited with masterfully ushering the island to independence in 1962. He's one of our 7 national heroes, and his face adorns the $5 bill.
Finding out this bit of information about her made us realize that she was a woman of stature, well known and respected by important members of the society of her time. According to the paper, her tavern license was being revoked due to the presence of disorderly conduct and loose women in the area near to her restaurant.
Mr. Manley defended her character and spoke to her business ethics, and he called to witness Mr. Alfred Myers, a solicitor of the Supreme Court and a regular patron of her establishment. Mr. Myers declared that he dined there very often due to its proximity to his chambers in downtown Kingston, and that he had always found her to be a decent and honest gentlewoman who would put up with no form of disturbance or disorderly conduct whatsoever in her establishment, irrespective of who it was from. When we learned this story, we realized for the first time the true nature of her character and life. And it was a life full of humor, adversity, overcoming, and strength.
It was at this point in our research that we began to question if we had come full circle, and that perhaps the career that we felt we had stumbled upon by chance was in fact our destiny. Perhaps it was in our blood to be restaurateurs and entrepreneurs, we asked ourselves, in our blood to create delicious meals and recipes that nurture the spirit and bring people home.
At this point, we realized that irrespective of the challenges that we had been faced with in our careers and our life, that we were to focus and stay the course no matter what. Because despite the challenges that she faced, she was always resilient and powerful, and she never strayed.
We had to ask ourselves the questions: how had she done this? What were the lessons that we, as mothers, sisters, daughters, proud West Indian women, what lessons could we take from her life? The first, which was a theme that played itself over and over again in her life, was to never give up, be resilient, reinvent. Her life was one of thriving through reinvention. That was very evident to us. By 1934, she was forced to sell the Royal Cafe because there was an accident in which a car ran over her foot. According to the local papers, because she was always in them, this stopped her from being able to work for long hours and stand on her feet. In true Ma Briggs fashion, she sued for damages, and she won.
She took some time, and then a mere 18 months later, she was back with her biggest, baddest, and boldest reincarnation yet. Her first namesake restaurant, which was housed in a building, by the way, that she owned. The Briggs Restaurant and Ice Cream Garden opened its doors on March 20th, 1936. It was a Friday night, so naturally it was an all-night affair, serving up ice-cold beers, late suppers, baked black crabs, and her signature crispy crust Briggs patties, served hot, of course. Now, let's be clear here. This was no mere neighborhood patty shop. There were all sorts of luxuries: Tiffany lamps, antique mahogany high-back chairs, and garden gazebos with individual buzzers to call your waitress for personalized service, for more intimate dining, of course. On the date of opening, Ma Briggs was 61 years old.
The second, more subtle lesson that we took from her life was own your space and own your name. She fiercely and unapologetically defended her name and everything it stood for. In a time long before the concept of a personal brand existed, she branded everything as her own and was prepared to fight to defend her name if anyone tried to exploit it.
Knowing your ancestral story is a powerful way to self-actualize and self-advocate. It gives you not only an opportunity to heal the generations that came before you, but it imbues your work with power and legacy, which emboldens you to claim your space with the same kind of fierce authority that Ma Briggs did.
It's not always easy to explore the stories of our ancestors because sometimes they're painful or complicated. By no means was our exploration into our past a bed of roses. There were many hard truths we had to discover. But we came to understand that life is a multifaceted process. And in that there is not one truth and one narrative that we can sanitize and make comfortable for all. We are all a blend of shadow and light. And the true measure of a life is really seen when we incorporate all of these aspects into one truth in ourselves. We encourage you to find the truth of your own ancestors. It is an important part of healing for yourselves, your families, and your communities. If you don't happen to have a Ma Briggs in your lineage, look to collective ancestors and be inspired by stories that resonate with you. Become your own historian to tell and find your own truth.
Because true equity can only come when we recognize and validate the truth in everyone's experiences, irrespective of whether or not they are different from ours. It creates a forum and a foundation for open, non-discriminatory engagement, the kind where all stories hold equal value and have equal worth. Case in point, knowing the truth of Martha Briggs' story gave us the unspoken permission we needed to dream, and more importantly, to believe that despite coming from the category of other, as two Jamaican businesswomen of color, we have the right to stand on a TEDx stage in New York City and tell our story through hers. If she were alive, we imagine she'd be up here too. In fact, she kind of is. I think she would have liked that. Thank you.